All right. Good morning. Good morning. James, Gander, Eileen, Lewis, Laura, Robert, Roderick, Triple R. Well, that's an interesting one. Venkata. Nice. Looks like you got a multiple people. Man, that's the longest name I've ever seen. Venkata. That's awesome. All right. So good morning. I got a good icebreaker for us coming up, everybody. Just letting everybody know, welcome. We will get started. This is the Zero Trust Architecture Adoption in Federal Government. Right, Joe? That's why we're here.
Yes,
Checking to see if you're actually here.
I'm here.
You're here.
This
You're
is
here.
not an avatar. This is the real Joe Norton. It's a rare sighting, I know.
Well, welcome everybody. So the first question of the day is, number one, where are you from? Right? So where are you from? And along with that, since we have some propeller heads here, watch this, Joe. You ready for this? What was your first computer? All right, there you go. So where are you from? What was your first computer? Just pop that into the chat. Oh, we need to do the chat. I need to open that up so the chat actually works for everyone. There you go. I'm sorry. There you go. I have no idea why Zoom does that sometimes. So here we go. So I'm from Woodstock, Maryland. That's not too far from you, right? For you, Joe?
For me, Woodstock, Maryland. I'm in the middle of Illinois.
Oh, yes, it is. I thought you were on the East Coast. Oh, no, that's where you took your pictures. Was
That's
in
where I
Maryland.
took some of the photos from.
That's right. All right, so hold on a second. And it was hold on, if I could spell it right. What is it? I can't spell. I don't know how to spell Commodore. Obviously, but it was a Commodore 64 for me. So how you like that? A Tandy, IBM mainframe 360. Whoop, whoop, whoop. All right, Atlanta, Matthew, 286. Atari 800. Woo! I had an Atari ST. That was the second one. That because music stuff. A Commodore 64. Nice. So the question is, where are you from and what was your first computer? Since this is more of a propeller head kind of thing. Right, Shantanu? What was yours? What is that? TRS-80? I was waiting for somebody to say that.
Yeah, TRS-80.
There you go.
I don't want to say ENIAC because I'd be lying, but Z Spectrum, yeah.
There you go. X86, TRS-80 from Radio Shack. Nice. Love it.
It's got nothing to do with propeller heads. It has to do with gray hair or lack of hair.
It's a dual. That's a dual factor, right? So we get to see. I'm waiting for somebody to come back and say, something super smoking nowadays. I don't know. Compact. Remember the Gateway computers coming in the boxes? Remember those?
Yep.
Oh man, LeGrand is from Beaufort, Georgia. 286. Is that Tubo or Turbo? Turbo PC. There you go. Yeah, Commodore 128. See, Scott was behind me because I had the 64. Ha ha. So there you go. Awesome. So here we go. Who else we got here? 50 miles north of New Orleans, X8280 compact. Oh, Barbara worked on National Cash Register computers. Woo. All right. Nice. Oh, well, look at this one from Robert. I did support the VAX system. That's not the COVID vax we're talking about, Robert.
No.
Not right, Joe?
So here's a piece of trivia. I physically installed all of the hardware and software for VAX 11780 serial number 2 from Digital Equipment Corporation. We purchased the second one off the line for the A6 and F-14 avionics laboratory at Grumman Aerospace.
Wow. That's crazy.
Serial number 2.
And listen to this. Just to put things in perspective for nowadays. Anthony's saying Micro Center is selling a 4 gigabyte RAM laptop for kids at $60.
Yep.
Runs Windows 10, pretty cheap construction, but $60. So a little adder. So when I did the Atari ST thing, right, that was a full megabyte, one full meg of RAM. And I bought an external hard drive to hook up to that bad boy. It was a 50 meg hard drive that cost $650, as much as the computer did.
Yep.
Just saying.
So,
All right. So now everybody knows our ages.
yep. And James Gander just indicated he was at Grumman. There you go, alumni. Yep, I was there in 1978. Beth Page and out at Carrollton at the Flight Test Center.
Crazy. All right, we're going to cook it in just a minute. I want to make sure. That there's nobody doing anything crazy. It's kind of weirding out on my thing. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to we'll get us cooking here as we were just sharing each other's propeller head stories, where you're from and your first computer. Love it. We appreciate you guys joining us. In fact, this is one of the hottest topics that's out there, Joe and Shantanu. We appreciate you guys being here to help us understand it. And we want to welcome everybody that's here. We got a bunch of folks that I saw, especially from EPA and state. So welcome for you guys, especially. Speaking of that, best briefing ever. Sean from state says the tech works and the briefing provides technical info, not just talking heads giving theories. Holy cow, smacking Joe around already. So there you go. We are not going to get too technical because everybody would go into a coma if we did. But we will be talking about some of the reasons for this. And David from EPA is asking ZTA minimum viable implementation. Scott from USDA offers CEUs. CEUs, continuing education. If you do want continuing education, pop that in the Q&A and I'll make sure that you get a certificate. How about that? And then all you have to do is get approved by your supervisor and you get yourself your CEUs. How do you like that? From Philip from DHS OIG, I get a good understanding of zero trust. Going to help with that. Try it anyway, right, Joe?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I can do that.
Yes, sir. Chris from the VA, I learned something new. Some new things about CT. So that's the best briefing ever if he learns just something new. Catherine from Department of State, I can understand what to look for when procuring IT solutions that include zero trust models. Love that. Because that's some of the things that we will talk about. And Dean from FTC, we understand how to build an ICAM program for a federal agency. What does that mean, Joe?
Identity, credentialing, and access management, which is basically, how do you put this? If you have ICAM on one side, ZTA is a way of implementing, or a philosophy, I hate to say this, but it's the philosophy and theory behind implementing your ICAM program. So basically, I want to say theory. It's really the principles behind that you would use to implement your ICAM program.
All right. Well, there you go. So hopefully we will talk a little bit about that. Please address mandates, the security issues, the resources, how to get it done. A lot of people asking about that, by the way. I put Paul up there because she was the mandates, security issues, and resources, how to get it done. Absolutely going to talk a little bit about that. Right, Joe?
Sure.
And Chris from the VA, what assistance tools will be available in GitHub? You want to talk about that real quick?
That's an interesting one. I'm sure you can find pretty much anything to solve world hunger as well as ETA in GitHub. However, if you want to rely on GitHub as your source of solutions, I suggest that you should assess your career potential going forward.
Don't do it, Chris. That's what he's saying. Mary from TSA, user authorization, right? That's part of the process, right?
Yeah.
And Abraham from FEMA, how long will it take for government agencies to be compliant with zero trust initiatives? That's the $1 million question, right?
That's the loaded question. Let me handle that during the dialogue.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. What is the impact of ZTA on on legacy systems from Paulette from the VA. A lot of legacy systems there. There is impact there. Isn't that right, Joe?
Now that the answer is yes.
Yes. And the impact is yes. Eric from VA. Why now and not before? And what does an EO directive tell us? We will talk about that. And John from Census, is there a reference architecture and best practices document? That's a great question too. You want to take that one real quick? Or
Oh,
not?
yeah, it is. It's out there. We'll do it in the dialogue. It's there. It's
There
on
you
the
go.
slide.
All right, fantastic. All right, and the guy that we're talking to is Joe Norton. He's a senior fellow with Divine's Digital Risk and Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, and a whole bunch of things underneath of that. Laszlo is not able to join us today, but I think Joe can handle the where we're headed, and we'll do our best to be able to keep the dialogue and include you in the dialogue as well, right, Joe?
Absolutely. That's the
Yep.
whole purpose.
So we'll talk a little bit about the briefing controls, and I already introduced you. I'll introduce you a little bit more to Shantanu and Divine as we get started. But what zero trust is in the government and what it is not, we're going to talk about that. Federal mandates and initiatives, areas and agencies expected to make progress by 2024. So part of that, those questions was when. Well, there you go. Pitfalls and traps on implementing zero trust. We already addressed one, which was potentially GitHub. Session docs, briefing presentation, the DoD ZTA handout, and the ZTA capabilities from Divine will be populated in the chat momentarily. I do believe, right, Zachary? Coming in. And as far as briefing controls, if you have no idea of what kind of system you're on today, this is Zoom. And if you go up to the top, you can make side by side, make it bigger or smaller by dragging that doodah. That's a very scientific term for everybody, just the doodah, to be able to pull it to the side. If you'd like to participate, we will be putting the docs into the chat because that's where we want to share those types of things, and you're welcome to pop things in there too. But if you have questions, since there's 64 people here and we want to keep it relatively sane, you can raise your hand. You can pop your information in the Q&A. And if you have something that you don't want everybody else to see and you want to engage Shantanu directly, this is his information. How do you say your last name, Shantanu?
S. Govilkar. Yeah.
Goviker?
Yeah, you got
Okay,
it.
very good, fantastic. And just so everybody knows, we do this for everybody that's GSA oriented. It's not affiliated or endorsed by GSA and or any other agency for that matter. And participation by you, especially government personnel, it's not an indication or endorsement of commitment to purchase from any vendor. We have other folks that are here that are vendors as well. So that's why we do this, so that we can create the dialogue. We did this years ago, and that's what GSA had for us. So where are you on your ZTA journey? That's not why you're here, but where are you? There it is. Man, I'll get this done somehow. Haven't started yet. Scheduled ZTA readiness assessment. ZTA readiness assessment is complete, and their ZTA implementation is underway or fully implemented. And we already know if somebody picks one of those answers, it hasn't been picked yet. We know there's some Pinocchio happening if that one of those answers is selected, right? All right. So if you guys, again, if you want to participate, if you have any questions and you'd like us to know, let's see. I'm going to answer these real quick. James says from Leesburg, and he had a compact and USDA and Scott, we will make sure we get you those CEUs for you. Gotcha, buddy. All right, fantastic. We'll do that. All right, Shantanu, while these folks are answering this question about this poll, tell us a little bit about Divine, how you guys got started and what you're up to.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. So primarily, we have been playing in commercial as well as the federal space with clients such as Department of Energy. Our focus is to create value through our service stack, which includes cloud, on-prem, and cybersecurity solutions. What makes us unique is we are not a company that builds hours for service. We bring our intellectual property, IP, and we reduce the hours that we bill for the customers. And with that, we can get more done with less. And customers love that because they are mandated to do more with less themselves.
That's right.
Also, very active contributor in the community. We have helped NENA, National Emergency Number Association. Several of our colleagues are members of FBI InfraGuard. It's a community outreach by FBI. And some of us are on the board of George Washington University and even other universities. Very well recognized in the industry. Joe and Laszlo, and in addition to me, we have done several keynotes at a very prestigious conferences in last few years, in fact. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, Dave.
Love it. And so you are 8A. So for the folks that are here in procurement, 8A, that can mean something. When did you get your 8A?
About few months ago, I would say.
Yeah. So, well, congratulations on that. That's no little feat. So we appreciate you being here, Shantanu. And if you have any questions, Shantanu's email will pop up from time to time so that you can reach out directly as well as the phone. All right. So let's start. How do we start this conversation? First things first, smoking pictures. This guy does, Joe Norton. You took this here not too far from where I'm at, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that was at Conowingo Dam on the Susquehanna River.
Has anybody else taken a picture that looks that good? I know I never have. Just saying. That is awesome. So great conversation starter. Conowingo Dam, they have a bunch of bald eagles there, right? It's very fun.
Yeah, they do. So the way to start this is, when you think about ZTA, the question that Dave had posed to me when we first started doing this series of webinars, is where do you start? And I said, the first thing is you have to figure out if you want to be the eagle or the fish. I said, okay. And, so we popped a picture in there. And I'm a photographer, so I get a lot of pleasure out of my wildlife photography, et cetera. And it's just a metaphor, right? ZTA is a big thing. And as we go through this, and when we look at the executive order, we'll answer that question of why now. And, my general answer to why now is if we don't realize why now, then you got to start paying attention to the news. If you're not already listening to the news and tracking how many cybersecurity issues we have around the world and the attacks every day, et cetera, that's why now. And you can say, but this is the U.S. federal government. Yeah, and we've lacked for investment focused on cybersecurity for so long that we're playing catch up all across the board, across all of the systems, and that's just the way it is. So that's why now. And as you look through this today with us, you go through the dialogue, I hope you all take a look at it and think about this and saying, hey, listen, you either want to get on the bandwagon and get ahead of this, okay? Or if you'll be the last agency that never implemented ZTA or improved cybersecurity controls, and you'll be the last one that gets blown up in the news when you lose more critical data.
Love it. And the big why we're here,
but that's just the way it is. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the big why we're here, there's an executive order that popped out back in May of 2021, and
right. Yep.
Take us through it.
So as we look at this, the executive order for improving the nation's cybersecurity was signed and released on 12th in 2021. And then we go back to September, OMB issued its draft federal strategy for moving the government forward, including for zero trust architecture. Is this in pure presentation mode?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then back in January 19th and then in the 26th, OMB, the memorandum came out and from NSM-8, and OMB issued further guidance with more details on strategies and what to do and what the expectations were across federal government, okay? So now, if you look at the calendar, that was like May 21. Okay, we're past May 22 and we're into August. This is where we are. Okay. And if we look at the schedule of events that have been detailed, ZTA is a very short, it appears we have lots of time. Okay, but it's a tough order to get there. Executive Order 14028 that was issued on May had 9 very specific focuses. Policy for more secure cybersecurity across our federal government, removing barriers to sharing information across all of our agencies, as well as across the military and DoD, and providing enhanced security perspectives for our supply chain, and specifically in IT, the software supply chain, which is often the weakest link. Having a review board across federal government so that we can better share information and policies and reuse of what we're doing, standardizing a playbook for dealing with vulnerabilities and incidents as they occur, detection of vulnerabilities and incidents, improving how we investigate, remediate, and overall national security systems. But the focus today, when we talk about zero trust architecture, is specifically on paragraph or section 3, modernizing the federal government cybersecurity, of which ZTA is a very critical component of doing that. Next, please.
Yep.
So if we look at, the federal civilian executive board and agency imperatives, it's advanced towards zero trust architecture, adopt best practices, accelerate cloud services, centralize and streamline all of your cybersecurity data, analytics for seeing where the attacks and your risks are, and investing in technology. The 2 most important to me that we're going to talk about today are advancing towards zero trust architecture, and the fact that we're finally willing in our federal budgets to invest in technology and personnel to get us there.
Have you seen, you've been involved with a lot of different agencies. Are they absolutely applying the money in the right places now that you see?
Some people are, some people aren't. I mean, everybody struggles to where they are in the agency, where they think their stature is, and how aggressive you're being going after the funds. But we'll look at the budgets and the money that's available, and I will tell you the figures astound me. The amount of money that is currently available today stuns me for cybersecurity. Even just specifically carved out in the budgets for cybersecurity. Look at that on the budget slides.
So yeah, we'll definitely get to that. And real quick on the links, some folks are having trouble with the links. Don't stress. We'll make sure that you have those. You'll get a copy of the presentation. You'll have a link to the video recording as well if you need it. Just want to make sure if you're having any trouble. It seems to be working for some folks and not working for other ones. So there you go. And back to the draft strategy for moving towards, right? Just you recapping what you had before.
At the highest level, the goals are stated on what to achieve coming out of the draft strategy, and then what are you expected from the OMB guidance that was, to achieve by September 30th, 2024. Tattoo this someplace on your bodies. ETA, September 30th, 2024. Okay. What are your focuses? Identity-wide, okay, access, identity, complete inventory and respond to incidents, encrypt at rest and encrypt in motion, treat all your applications as if they were internet connected, internal applications as well as external, okay? And make available all of your vulnerability reports for review across all of the government and CISA, and have a pathway to protect your data categorization, logging in, and information sharing, okay? Achieve enterprise-wide identity and multi-factor authentication. A complete inventory, think of this now, a complete inventory of every device in use in your agency, to be able to detect and respond to incidents and encrypt at rest, encrypt in transit, and act as if, this is really important, act as if you're connected to the internet, and pathway to data protection. That's what you're being asked to achieve. Now, Does that mean that it's expected or it's even achievable across the entire federal government to have absolute 100% implementation of ZTA across all of these goals by September 30th? To be discovered in 2024. But significant movement toward those goals and achievement is expected.
And just in case you're wondering which agencies,
All of you,
everybody.
everybody, including DOD. Okay, although the focus here is the federal civilian side, it's across the board.
And
I don't have to.
if you're wondering, here's some of the right down to the days, right? They're plugging in days now.
So when you look at this slide, I'm not going to read every point of guidance or expectations, but when OMB put out their specific guidance and expectations, look at the column of due dates. January, February 22, March 22, April 22, July 22. You guys should all be looking at this list and saying, hey, where do you sit on this scorecard? Now, we could create 70 pages of set of dates and expectations across all the agencies, but the data in that memorandum is there for you. It's publicly available. I don't have to have a security clearance. I don't have to have a password to log on to a government system. I can go find this stuff just by doing a search on the whitehouse.gov, and it's there. Where are you on these due dates? And if you haven't across your agencies met some of these already, I would be beginning to say, oh my God, how am I going to catch up?
That's true. Now, a lot of this is being driven by NIST and the components of NIST, right? So tell us about this SP 800-207, just in case they haven't
So
heard.
SP 800-207, what is zero trust? It's the guidance on defining what zero trust is. And it's specified as a collection of concepts and ideas designed to minimize uncertainty, enforcing accurate, and the most important piece, least privilege per request access decisions in information systems and services in the face of that are connected to any government network. Least privilege per request access decisions. Now, you might say, what does this really mean? All right. So we've spent so much time, especially in the civilian world, and also in government, thinking about single sign-on. I'm sitting there and I log on. I have to have all these passwords. I got all these systems. Everything's different. So we spent decades, we spent eons trying to make everything simpler and simpler and simpler for people. And the result is we created landscapes that are very vulnerable to compromise because of that. So zero trust is not something brand new. This has been around for 30 years, okay? The concepts behind zero trust have been around forever. It's no different than having to walk into a secure facility, okay, and stop at the gate and have a security person look at you, then ask you for your ID, compare it to your picture, and then still question if you are who you say you are. That's per request every time you go in. Now apply those types of security controls to your information systems and say, hey, listen, I can't trust that you're on all the time. I can't trust that it's you. Why? Because there's so many weaknesses across the IT landscape that can be picked apart through vulnerabilities. You have to test it. You can't leave access open all day long, especially if you're sitting at a laptop or a desktop, et cetera, and leaving everything wide open. Least privilege per request access decision. Let's go into this further, Dave.
Yep, you got it. And more importantly, what isn't it, right? So
it's not a COTS solution. So I've made this statement several times in this webinar, and I've actually had two people take exception to me saying this. Oh no, we found a vendor who has a 100% COTS solution. And I would say, yeah, I think so. There's no such thing as a COTS solution. There's too many components to this to put into one piece of software, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that the tools aren't out there. There's lots of tools you can use, and we'll go through this a little bit more as we go forward in the dialogue today. But it's also not a solution for zero-day vulnerabilities. If you implement ZTA, a zero trust architecture, that's not going to remove vulnerabilities. It's that simple. And moving to a cloud adoption does not equal zero trust. You have to test your procurement if your cloud providers have implemented at their side zero trust. And no matter what you think about cloud security, or we may think, or I may think about third parties and going to the cloud, et cetera, the weakest link is always your suppliers. So, I lived out there in that world. I've worked for major international corporations. I've been a consultant with McKinsey. I did my own consulting. I was the CTO at McDonald's Corporation. I was the head of technology and the CTO at Novartis Pharmaceuticals. I can give you a list. You can look it up on LinkedIn where I've been and what I've done. I've also worked for some of the significant, as a chief security officer for one of the world's largest third-party providers of cloud services. And I can tell you that your cloud services, your suppliers, do not staff their data centers with 100% of their employees. Most of the data centers from your major cloud suppliers are supported with subcontractors. So who do you trust? It's that simple.
And the answer is you don't trust anybody until they're trusted.
NTA. So zero trust starts with the approach, and I know it was a question earlier, a statement about the theory, but it's a philosophy and a culture. You have to adopt a philosophy and culture that says, I will test every access request. And then supporting it with your policies and your systems and your support from leadership.
I think one of the things that you have always stated, and you continue to build this, is the fact that it's holistic. It doesn't, you can't pick little pieces, and it's almost difficult to do it iteratively even, right? So it's like you gotta actually look at both ends and the middle all at the same time.
Absolutely. And it's just like there's a reason there are no screen doors on a submarine. Okay. And I know that for a fact because I served in the submarine service. The zero trust core principles are around securing your devices, your applications, your networks, your data, and your identities. It's an identity-centric policy model for controlling access. It starts at saying, hey, this is going to be my policy for identity and access management. And this is very specific to your ICANN programs. What is your policy for ICANN? It should be identity-centric, okay? 3 core principles. All resources are accessed securely, regardless of location or where you are. Doesn't matter. Adopt a least privilege strategy and strictly enforce access control. And least privilege means you do not get multi-access when you log in, or you enter a system should not be giving you automatic access to another system. Least privilege says you log in for the duration of time you have authorized access for an application or a set of data. And when you're done with that session, you're logged out. And when you come back, you have to log in again. And you inspect and log all data traffic.
And you mentioned something, because a lot of times when you log in, you're there for the duration of the day, sometimes until you log out, right? So
you see this all the time. And I'm not going to use federal agencies as an example. I'll use commercial agencies. I said I served as the chief security officer for information technology security, as well as all of the physical plant and everything else security in the company worldwide. And, I'd go to headquarters in Europe for this company and I'd walk around our headquarters buildings. And, we had token cards for people to get access. You had to put the card in the laptop and everything else. And I'd walk by desks and the laptop would be open. The token card would be in the USB slot. And the screen would be up and wide open, and there's nobody at the desk. It's unbelievable. And when I got there, it just stunned me. And when I joined this company, and we were selling securities all across the world. And it's like, I'm looking at what we're doing at our own headquarters. And I would just walk around from the hours local time from 11 o'clock to 12:30, and I would just pull token cards and slam laptop covers down. And I go back to my office with pockets full of token cards. Okay. And then I just wait to see how long it would take somebody to realize they couldn't go back to work, because they violated our basic policy of logging in and logging out. It's kind of interesting. And that's why ZTA today is so important. And no matter what we think about ourselves or our staffs, our colleagues or anything else, the weakest link in security is always the human factor. You can put all of the controls and systems in you want. The weakest link is always the human factor.
And also known as a picnic error. If anybody knows what that is, you can put it in the chat. Oh, by the way, Scott says, thanks for serving, shipmate. So Scott,
There you go, USS Sturgeon, SSN 637.
That's fantastic. So there you go. So if you know what a picnic error is, you can pop that in the chat. And if I don't get it from somebody, I will make, I'll let everybody know what a picnic error is. But let's talk about the time frame here again. Short timeline. That's what you're reiterating, right?
As the directives have been promulgated by CISA in the time frame, as I said earlier, it's a long journey in a relatively short period of time, right? It started in 2021. We're in, arguably into Q3 in 2022. We're being asked to get stuff done by September 30th, 2024 on the calendar year, okay? Q3. So you may say, hey, listen, we got plenty of time. And if you believe that, I'm a guy that grew up as a kid in New York City. I will sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. You do not have a lot of time. A lot of time is always relative. It has everything to do with the in the age of your IT landscapes.
That's right. And Peter says it's the same as a layer 8 issue. I'm sure we're going to find out about that. SSN 765 was Robert, and Scott has it. Problem in the chair, not in the computer, is a picnic error. There you go.
Yep. There you go.
And so threat hunting, you were threat hunting, just going around saying, hey, is it potential for something to happen, right?
I think what's important here is that included is reference to public law 116. CISA now is authorized to conduct its own threat hunting activities across the federal civilian agencies and networks without prior authorization from your agency. They're allowed to scan you, they're allowed to probe you now. They don't have to ask permission as part of a test, okay? And they will submit their own quarterly reports to the National Security Advisor Assistant and to the OMB.
Yep. And we'll get to some questions in just a second. We will light it back up for questions, but the question we have here is, what is your biggest challenge with Zero Trust? Number one, understand what it is. Meeting the presidential memorandum. Everybody should pick that. You can pick as many as you want, by the way. What's the impact on your agency, your job role, or finding resources to help with implementation? Pick one of those there. We got, let's see. Can we get the slide deck? Yes, you should. I'm not sure why we have a couple of folks. There's a couple of folks that are having trouble getting to the links. Please say, we'll reach out after this to make sure we figure out what that is, because we don't want that to happen. And if you can't get access to it from the links that Zachary's popping in there, we'll make sure you have it as soon as we're done. We'll get those too. And then Aaron says, similar to PEBCAC, the problem exists between keyboard and the chair. Yep, that's exactly right. All right, if you have any questions for Joe as we're running through this, let us know. Do me a favor, either raise your hand or pop it in the Q&A. If you have a private dialogue, that's where you can reach out to Shantanu directly. Session handouts just got popped in there again. And we will address some of the things. We'll go back to the things that people were asking in the beginning. But if you have anything in the flow of the dialogue here, we'd love to include you. Because we know there are challenges with zero trust, don't we, Joe?
Sure, there are. There's lots of challenges. Well, there's challenges every day getting out of bed sometimes, okay? But, challenges should not stop anything.
And it says funding isn't one of the available answers. We should put that in there.
Not anymore. But that used to be a good excuse. I don't have the money. Okay.
Yeah, that is not a problem nowadays. All right, so no other questions? But I appreciate that, Tim. So I'm gonna keep the poll open for another 10 seconds, and then while you're talking about these challenges, this is universal, right? This isn't anything that happens in any particular agency.
No, it's just that some of your challenges is making the switch from implicit trust to zero trust. So like zero trust says I trust nobody. Let's least privilege access, test on every access. Implicit trust says I tested you once. You now have the right to go anywhere, and that is a huge shift. And it does impact the tools you use and the architectures you build, right? So rebuilding or replacing with cloud is not going to solve the problem for zero trust. It does include massive investments in not only people, training, and skills, but you have to do the work, right? And you should always ask the question, do you or can you trust your suppliers? The weakest link is your suppliers. We've proven this over and over and over again. You might say, why are you slamming my supplier? My supplier is great. I'm not slamming any supplier. Many supplier organizations are huge, multi-billion-dollar organizations. Many suppliers are small, and they don't have as much funding to implement for IT security, et cetera, so on and so forth. It's that simple. We just know that the supply chains in many cases are weak. Supply chain members, especially software development houses, have been using and continue to use for viable reasons subcontractors all around the world. And keeping track of all of those pieces, et cetera, as you know, and some of the massive breaches we've had over the past 2 years came from the IT supply chain.
Mhm.
Okay. And not securing their updates, that their update mechanisms were vulnerable to easy access from third parties, and that's how it injected malware into most of your agencies. Okay, is there a single maturity model or consensus in targeting what to do? No, if it was, we would have all bought them already and implemented it all around the world. Okay? And one of the complexities with IT, as you well know, is all of the technologies in play. In many cases, some of the oldest technologies still in business today are in our federal government, with the exception of Lowe's. I'm going to pick on Lowe's. I hope you don't mind. If anybody has a relation or anybody working at Lowe's, like Home Depot, I'm going to pick on Lowe's.
No, I'm not related. So,
okay, cool. But Lowe's home improvement stores, I'm there the other day. I was trying to place an order for ceiling tiles, believe it or not. And it was very interesting. They wanted to upgrade me to a supplier, pro contractor account from my, my individual person account, which I had already had approval for years for my military discount, my veterans discount, my 10%, which I always go to Lowe's to get my 10%. So I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. It was going to save me $80 on delivery or something like that. Well, don't you know, within 30 minutes, they screwed up all my accounts. My veterans discount disappeared. After they transitioned to the account, they couldn't find my account and this and that. And I'm digging into this with the help desk, and I'm in the store. And I'm finding out that Lowe's is still running all of their internal systems behind the point of sale on DOS. On DOS. I'm looking at the screen and I'm saying, I recognize that crap. Okay. So listen, hey, if the technology works and your business systems works, it's fantastic. However, when it comes to implementing anything new in anybody's IT landscape, the older the technology platform, be it DOS, or if it be COBOL or anything else in business systems.
There's a lot of green screens out there, Joe.
Yeah, and it's just the way it is, okay? Multi-year dedicated program office will be required. It's all about partitioning your work as portfolios of programs and projects to get through this. Remember the EO directive and the OMB guidance. You inventory all your devices, all your systems, all your identities, etc. There's a host of reporting requirements and a matrix across the agencies. Coordination communications gets complex. Software and support chains are immature just as much as we are. Flat networks versus segmentation. If you dig in beyond, this is not part of today's discussion, but if you dig into the EO and you look at the OMB guidance, et cetera, for improving our cybersecurity posture across the federal government, it does include specific requirements for your networks and microsegmentation. Now, microsegmentation is not ZTA specific. However, your networks and your network implementation impacts how you would implement ZTA. No more single sign-on and, software vendors claims versus reality. Always tests what you're being sold.
Always a great idea, first of all, to do that. And I think a lot of times, is it better to have like a pilot to kind of see how it works within certain areas? How do you do this? You're eating an elephant.
Any methodology is divided up into small things. Big bang is not going to work here. Yep. Pick one system, pick all the identities associated with one of your business systems, and do a pilot on implementing. But can you implement do I believe, in my experience, do I believe you could pilot partial ZTA for a system? And I would say no. Do I believe we can design programs and projects to implement ZTA against a business system? Yes, as opposed to 40 or 50 or 60 or 100 systems in your agency at the same time. I would pick a system, I would implement it as a pilot, I would prove out, I would take my learnings before I started to roll it out across the rest of the world.
And a lot of times when it comes to contractors, right? So contractors, and you mentioned the weakest link, may be down multiple food chains, right? And folks that have access to systems.
So I'm not picking on the contractors themselves. It's just that it gets complex the farther the layers from company to company to company to company, right? So I mean, it's all over the internet that I was the chief security officer for Atos, one of the world's largest purveyors of providing contracted legacy services and cloud services. Number one, of course, Europe and Asia, as far as scale is concerned. And I can flat out tell you that is one of the two of the major cloud service providers that are on your GSA list were staffed with Atos employees and subcontractors. I can tell you that for a fact. So that just means that keeping track of all the identities and who has access to and from the infrastructures and the business systems and your data must extend to every identity.
Which means we have to change the way that we're everybody's identified.
Philosophy, you have to get around the culture of doing this. Okay, let's move on.
Yep. So it's terrible out there, Joe. You've been painting it's terrible.
It always looks bad on the horizon. However, I can tell you from experience that things are never as good as nor as bad as they first appear. You can get there.
And we will. We're going to get there.
Yep. Seems like a lot, but it isn't. So back to ICANN, back to what you're dependent upon. It's governance, operations, discipline, and continuous monitoring. Now, what are the core components of implementing a zero trust architecture? Asset management, configuration management, patch management, and you'll see that I break out machine identities and people identities separate. User, process, machine identity management, user, process, machine access management, and then segmentation of your networks play a big part. Okay, and how you implement. Now, what I separate out is identity management from access management. And there are tons and tons of tools that are available out there and methodologies for identity and access management that I can give you a whole list of people that will sell you stuff. I've used all their tools throughout my career. However, when it comes to zero trust, I break out and separate the ideas and the philosophies behind inventorying and keeping control of identity versus access. Identity versus access. And why do I do that? Because if you lose control of the amount of identities, how can you control the access? So you want to control and monitor identities and aging on identities. Are they needed anymore or not? As opposed to access in using the identities.
Yep. So DOD, you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, DOD has provided significant guidance already because they've been piloting this stuff for ZTA. Non-person identities and person identities. If you look at what they have provided in their reference architecture against modernizing enterprise information and infrastructure, simplifying security architectures, consistent policies, data management, it's the idea of non-person identities as well as person identities. One is keeping track of the people. The second, the non-person identities, is your application to application or system to system connection points and identities.
Interesting.
And that is in zero trust reference architecture. DoD had it published for a while now. Their reference architecture maturity model, it's available to all of you. I'm not going to read this slide. It has a methodology for going through discovery, assessment, baselining, and achieving your intermediate and advanced goals in zero trust. Next slide, please. And more detail and flow charts against concepts going from the concept stage to the reality stage. There's just so much help that's out there for you to use. Your trick, if it is, and your challenge is how to apply it to your landscape, to your inventory of systems and identities. That's where your workload is. Okay. And I'm going to go back to least privilege again, just because I just want to hammer this home. Okay. It's just like, you know, for 6 years, I was an adjunct professor at Northwestern University, the Kellogg School of Management. And I used to teach IT portfolio management and portfolio and program management for executives, et cetera, as well as just IT architectures and business systems in the cloud. And I used to go there with the Masters of the Universe in their MBA classes and go, I want you to pay attention to this. Anytime I do this, pay attention to what I'm saying, okay? Least privilege, the idea that any user, program, or process should only have a bare minimum of privileges necessary to perform its function. It works by allowing only enough access to perform the task, and it's applied against users, systems, processes, networks, databases, applications, etc. Okay, that's least privilege. And I hate, I don't hate to say this because I keep reminding everybody around me that super access, okay, to any individual identity is a weakness in your security profile. Super access roles is a weakness in any one of your security profiles.
I could not agree with that more. Anybody.
And if you're thinking about complexity, I don't know how many people are PMP certified. I've been PMP certified for years. I used to work with and support PMI with the guys who wrote the first PMBOK, and I was one of the earliest PMP credentialed people out there when I was in the aerospace industry. And every one of you who has a PMP certification should recognize this: how to estimate complexity. The n times n-1 divided by 2 will tell you how many connection points that you have. You can apply this to communications. You can apply it to network nodes. You can apply it to the number of identities you have to manage. And if you don't recognize this, you should if you have a PMP certification, you should turn it in and start over, because this is on the PMP certification test. Sorry,
So
guys.
two things we learned today. GitHub, bad. If you don't recognize this and you're PMP, you got to go back to school.
I gotta go back and take the test again. Okay, cool. And when it comes to portfolio and program management, I'm sure you're all familiar with the requirements of OMB 53 and 300. It's a portfolio of portfolios, programs, and projects. A lot of reporting requirements, a lot of tracking. You're going to have to report all of your activities, just like anything else that you do in IT and government. I don't have to dig into this, but I understand OMB 300 in reporting. I've done a bunch of consulting over the years in different agencies. And the flow charts, the flow, how to do this, et cetera, I hope you're all familiar with. But if you're not, there's plenty of training courses as well as reference materials available on reporting for OMB 300. Now, I said that I am stunned at the amount of money that's out there today. Now, I am happily stunned. The IT-dashboard.gov, I will tell you 6 months ago, the chart on the left was on that dashboard. It's not there anymore. Somebody took it down. I don't know why, but I'm still publishing it here because I wanted you to see the trend lines going back so many years in the growth of money that's available in federal government for IT, okay? So there's almost $1 billion out there in the federal budgets across all of the agencies and DoD for unclassified IT. Almost over $1 billion, okay? And if we look at what was released in the OMB's analytic perspectives across IT spending on your federal civilian agencies, the chart on the right is directly out of that publication. It's publicly available. There's your budgets, okay? And specifically called out in this year's budgeting, okay, for civilian agencies, is a separation of $10 billion targeted across security. $10 billion. Now, I've been the head of security, I've been the CTO, I've been in a lot of different roles across my career, and I can tell you what I used to do with 500 million. Imagine what I could do with 10 billion. Okay. 10 billion.
Crazy.
Only on security. All right. So the funds are available. You just have to go get them and apply them. Okay, I've had questions in the past about trusted internet connection policy and FIT, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. Is ETA doesn't replace this stuff. It's all interconnected. Next slide, please. If you look at information technology, the IT portion of the FIT program, it's about accessing your, buying tablets and networks and everything else. Your devices don't come with ZTA. You apply identity management against access to all your devices, et cetera. So one does not replace the other. That's the simplest comment I have there. Okay. What is covered? Hey, it's out there. You know what's covered under GSA and FIT, your laptops, your tablets, your mobile devices, everything you access. So there you go. I added that just because it came up twice in two different, in different webinars. Trusted internet connection guidance still exists. That's your internet connection guidance. That's how to design and implement your networks. And what is a trusted internet connection? We had questions in our webinars in this series about, well, how does this impact my connections with other agencies and other governments, especially if I'm in DoD? And I say, there is no difference. They're just another identity. You're allowing access at an executive level to get to certain information or business systems connected on a network. ZTA applies. Okay. I would just keep going. I'm just beating a dead horse to death.
All right.
Okay. So my key takeaways, what are they? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You can go all the way back to Aristotle for that one. And my personal comment is zero trust adoption will be unique to your agency. And again, I repeat, it has everything to do with your IT landscape and the technologies and systems that you have applied. And yes, does it apply to all your legacy systems? Yes. Okay. So where do you go from here? It's obvious, this is classic portfolio and project management. Okay, establish your scope, understand how you want to divide the work up, what projects you want to run, what pilots you want to do, where you want to get to when, look to the guidance for the goals and objectives, from OMB, which flows from the executive order. Inventory your vendors, make sure you have a CMDB behind everything and you can actually inventory. You got to start with that inventory of systems and devices and people identities and non-person identities. Formulate your way forward and then go adopt, start implementing it. Now, you might say, wow, that's too trite. Well, I'm sorry, guys, that's the outline, okay? You want to get deeper into this with us? We're happy to do that with anybody. Just reach out to us, to myself or Shantanu, and we can help you.
Absolutely. Speaking of reaching out, I'm going to open this up to say, if you want to continue the conversation, yes, I want to discuss ZTA implementation with my agency. I'd like to discuss something else. Please contact me, or I'll contact you. If I really want to talk to you, I'll call you, which you can do that as well. And if it's important, urgent, budget, FY 2022, we know where we are. We got 43 days left, ladies and gentlemen, and that's just the fact of the matter. And that money is going to be spent one way or the other, isn't it, Joe and Shantanu?
Absolutely.
Yes, it
You
is.
know, when I was working at Grumman, one of the first big initiatives when the first PCs were the original PC, the 8086 came out, and we were looking to modernize our avionics integration facility for the F-14 and the A6 programs. I went to our chief for the A6 program, our chief engineer. He was the CTO for it in today's speak. And his name was Willie Williams. And I was making a pitch to go out and buy 150 IBM PCs. We had the first bulk order of IBM PCs and DOS 1.0 for our engineers from IBM at that time. And Willie Williams looked me in the eye and he said, "Far be it for me to let somebody else spend my company's money foolishly when I can spend it so much more wisely with you, Joe." Approved, stamp. Go spend it, because if you don't use it, somebody else will.
And that's what's happening. We see it all over the place. Obviously, it's that time of year, September frenzy, as they call it. So if that's necessary, let us know. We want to hit the hot points, and want to hit. If there's a bunch of folks that want to talk in October, that's a good thing too, right? Because that'll be, hey, we're dealing with this after fiscal year ends. That's okay. That's the whole idea. It says if you want to continue the conversation, we'll keep that up for a second. You will get a recap email by the end of the day, which will include the presentation that some people have had a hard time getting to. We apologize for that. We'll make it right though, I promise. And session docs, the link to the video, and you can get connected with Shantanu or Joe. And with that, we're gonna get everybody out of here on time. It's actually right on the dot there, Joe. Joe, good job.
Hey, you know, that's one of the aspects of good program and project and portfolio management is on time, on schedule. Yes.
There you go. So if you have any additional questions, I saw a couple things in here. Let's see, there was a couple of comments. One was from Brian, said skilled workforce is a huge challenge to support ICAM tech, which we believe is critical to ZT. Just saying, you better believe it, right? Let's see here. One challenges us for balancing security versus burdening customer operations. Vicky, that's true and absolutely necessary at the same time. Wouldn't you say, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hey, if you're in the IT business, you know that. So somebody's working on what's next or fixing things, and at the same time, you have to keep operations running. So awesome. It's always the challenge.
Awesome. And zero trust assessment with Amtrak and DHS from Anil. Appreciate that. Love to continue the conversation. Everybody's saying thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome, Barbara and Robert. You're welcome. Sandranette says, great session, Joe. How you like that?
Thank you. Hey, it's always nice to get a pat on the back. Thank you.
There you go. It never hurts, right? So we appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you very much. And you will get those follow-ups by the end of the day. If there's anything that we missed, make sure we reach out to and get that done. There's 12 folks. I'm going to end this poll in 3, 2, 1, and boom. So there's 12 folks that you're going to want to talk to at some point. One of those is immediate. So there you have it. We'll make sure we get, which Shantanu, you got one person that you got to jump on after this, and we'll make sure that you get that information as well. Thanks for joining us, folks. Joe, great job as usual.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it, man. Bring some more of those pictures next time. I love it. Good stuff. Thanks, guys.
Right.